Hello guys, I am back from another video and today with deku was an animatronic. So, in the last video deku, when we finally left it off, right there, during last episode, it was during a battle between Izuku and the heroes against the evil clutches of the Springtrap cult. And the one that's leading it was Vanny. Vanny brings out these special little animatronics that resemble like Baby from like sister location called clown gremlins. And they basically terrorize the entire like stadium. The heroes were pretty much like, at you know, terrified trying to fight these things. It was super hard for them to try and fight because these creatures were basically as fast as lightning and super hard to defeat. When Izuku was fighting Vanny, Vanny got decapitated by him. But when he did decapitate him, her neck where her head used to be sprouted a tentacle and grabbed their head, reattaching it almost like nothing happened. But thankfully, Izuku called upon a friend, being Mei Hatsume, which she created with the help of Izuku, a special type of battlesuit that would actually help heroes, do more dangerous jobs, like for example, working in active volcanoes and things like that. But most, not really most, more like, but unfortunately, she didn't get to announce this little thing, or should I say the mech, I guess, because she kind of lost during the cavalry battle and she couldn't tell everybody about it. And so she just kept it. But when Izuku called for her help, she gladly did and defeated, well, by using fire, because after all, in my little headcanon, fire is good against animatronics that are possessed. Or at least any creature or anything permanent in them. Or agony. Or whatever the hell you called it. And so many names in there's so many names for remnant slash agony or whatever in the books and the game, so let's just say it's just called remnant. So after defeating Vanny, she goes and disappears into the darkness. As for the rest of the heroes, they defeated the clown gremlins pretty easily as well, but it was a pretty hard fight, contradicting my last statement. Anyway, so after they were defeated, the news started getting onto this story about this cult worshipping the villain or the killer known as the Purple Man. So, yeah, that was basically the end of that episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, as everybody was coming back after the break, everybody was excited to find and also pick their hero names. Izuku was also excited because he gets to pick his hero name. And so, instead of Aizawa coming into the class and saying it's time for us to pick our hero names or whatever, it's basically like that. Instead, Midnight appears as she explains that they're going to be picking their hero names and also picking their agencies where they're going to be going to. So, when they're picking their hero names, Izuku decided to pick this hero name. And thank you for the commenter that, picked this name. But, actually, it's kind of weird, but I guess it's okay. It's not really good or bad, but it's still pretty fun of a name. So, Izuku steps up as he goes up to the podium and says his hero name. And his hero name is... I am the Spectre Hero. You can call me Phantom Ghost. As one of his classmates, being Bakugo, said this. So, what's with the Phantom Ghost name? As Izuku just says this. Well, I could have just picked both Ghost and Phantom, so I decided to go for both. As he says this. Whatever. As Midnight approves of that name, as they started to get ready to pick their, internships. So, while Ezekiel is picking his internship, Ezekiel sees something that caught his eye. This internship is right next to the area where most of William Afton's killings happened. But the actual person that's wait for a second. That's the owner of that agency was not really a renowned hero, but is still pretty famous in that area. But his agency was currently under fire because of the whole, heroes changing thing. And so he's not really considered as a hero, but more like a vigilante, more or less. And his name was just called. Wait for a second. And that hero's name is just called Fang. The reason why he's called Fang is because of his quirk. His quirk is just a simple quirk. It just allows him to, he basically gets an iron jaw. As an iron jaw, I mean a literal iron jaw. Like, when he bites onto something, it basically acts as, a vice grip, crushing things with just his mouth. As Ezekiel just says this. Interesting. But the most important thing that Ezekiel thinks about is more of the Springtrap cult. And Ezekiel thinks that if they're actually worshipping, William Afton, Ezekiel thinks that he's probably going to be, or at least the cult is living in the area where William Afton mostly did his killings. And so, Ezekiel decides to go to that agency. So, the next day comes as they started leaving to go to their agencies. As Ezekiel gets picked up by Aizawa. Aizawa brings him to the agency as while they were moving and going there, Aizawa just asked Ezekiel this. So Ezekiel, why did you decide to go to this agency in the first place? As Ezekiel just says this, because I think that's where the Springtrap cult is located. As he says this, really? Then, how do you know? As Ezekiel just says this, well, apparently back in the day, William Afton mostly killed there. And I think that the Springtrap cult would definitely love to stay there. As he says this, I guess you're right. Wait for a second. But still, if they were to stay there, it would be a pretty obvious place. So, if they are there, you should try and contact us, the heroes, to help you, okay? As Ezekiel just says this. Okay, Dad. And so, they made it there without any hitches. As Ezekiel meets with the hero of that agency named Fang. As he says this. Oh, nice to meet you. You can call me Fang. My quirk is called Steeljaw. As Ezekiel just says this. Nice to meet you, Fang. And so, what we're gonna do? As he says this. Well, let's just do some patrolling for now. And also, by the way, have you heard about the news, apparently, about this, this group known as the Springtrap cult? As Ezekiel just says this. Oh yeah, apparently they're about to, strike again. As he says this. Wait, how did you know that? As Ezekiel just says this. Just a hunch. Wait for a second. As he says this. How about your whole, school? Apparently wait for a second again, god. Apparently the Springtrap cult basically took over the part of, UA high school and basically tried to kill everybody. As Ezekiel just says this. Apparently the heroes actually saved us. As he says this. Pretty obvious. After all, heroes are, the only things that are standing against villains, right? As Ezekiel just says this. I guess you're right. And so, they basically started their little, patrol the city. Patrolling the city, I meant. So, Ezekiel mostly patrolled the city, looking around, seeing many sights, mostly just, buildings. But Izuku did go to a park where William Afton used to murder children, but Izuku mostly just came there to just look around and see if there's any evidence that the Springtrap cult is located here. So, wait for a second. Sorry about that. And so, they looked around again the next day. So, the next day comes as they started looking around the entire city again. Mostly looking around, seeing if there's any trouble, but Izuku mostly found some burglars and maybe the occasional, you know, bad person. I'm not gonna say, I'm not gonna say, the actual name of that type of person, but I'll give you a hint. They basically force people to do, yeah. Anyway, so, after a while of looking around, they decided to get some rest, because it's the end of the day. As Fang says this, that was some hard work. As Izuku just says this, yeah, I guess. As he says this, so Izuku, what's with your, costume? It seems a bit plain. As Izuku just, just says this, well, my actual animatronic body is actually my hero suit, but I prefer not to use it, mostly because it looks terrifying. As he says this. Wait, animatronic suit? As Izuku just says this. Yeah, let's just say my quirk is basically like a type of ghost quirk. As he says this. A ghost quirk. As Izuku just says this. Yeah, I can basically control objects and go and control different types of objects. Sorry about that, wait for a second. Just as long as the object seems to be more humanoid, I can definitely control them. But if they're not humanoid, I just have a simple telekinesis type ability. And if I also have a link connection to other organisms, like anything that I controlled last time, I'm able to see through them, almost like a hive mind. As he says this. Oh, as Izuku explains more. I also have the ability to permeate through objects. So if an object tries to, fly towards me, I can just go through it. As he says this. So your quirk is just basically a ghost. I guess that's why you're called, I guess that's why your hero name is called the, wait for a second. I guess that's why you're called the Spectre Hero Phantom Ghost. As Izuku just says this. Yeah. As he says this. Anyway, what's with your, kid-ish appear... I meant, your kid-ish appearance, I meant. As Izuku just says this. Well, it's because of my quirk. Because my quirk basically acts as like a ghost, it kept me at a pretty young age. The age of 8. As he says this. So you're stuck as being 8 years old. As Izuku just says this. Yeah, I can't believe people just think that I'm just a normal kid just because I look like this. As he says this. That's a pretty cool, or should I say a pretty cute quirk. Even though you're stuck as a kid, I guess I could pull some strings so you can, drink alcohol and things like that. As Izuku just says this. Wait, really? As he says this. Yeah, I grew a bit fond of you. But because you're a kid, or at least look like one, I thought you were just weak. But after seeing your abilities in combat, you're actually pretty strong. As Izuku just says this. Thank you, Fang. Thank you, Fang Sensei. As he says this. Don't worry, just don't call me Sensei or anything. It's kinda stupid sounding. Just call me Mr. Wait for a second. Call me, Ryuji. Yeah, Ryuji. As Izuku just says this. Thank you, Ryuji. So, after that day, they started leaving and started getting ready for the next day of their patrol or internship. So, while they're on their internship, Izuku looks around again as Izuku sees something weird. Wait for a second again. God dang it. As Izuku sees a girl, this girl had several bandages all over her body. She also seems to be getting, well, trolleyed off by this man with a bird-like, plague doctor type mask. As Izuku almost feels something familiar about this guy. As Izuku just says this. Oh yeah, he's a villain. As Izuku comes out of the shadows and says this. Hey, who the hell are you? As he says this. Huh? Sounds like a kid. I guess I can just bring one more here. After all, he might be a good plaything for Eri. As Izuku comes out, wielding his axe, as Izuku just says this. Step away from the kid. As Overhaul says this. What? And yes, that's Overhaul. As he says this. What? What's with the axe, kid? Are you trying to threaten me? And besides, I'm the leader of the Yakuza. The name's Overhaul. As Izuku just says this. Wait. The leader of the Yakuza? What is he doing here? And what's with the... wait for a second. But what's with the kid? As he says this. Don't want to talk? Well then. As he touches the ground, as his arms turn into basically gauntlets. Gauntlets made out of the same stone that is made out of the floor, or the road. As he says this. Then you could die. As Izuku permeates through him, as he says this. What in the... As Izuku just says this. What an amazing quirk. So, you named yourself after your quirk, right? Overhaul? You're basically able to transfer molecular levels and some, actually, wait for a second. Transfer the abilities, strengths, and, weaknesses of different types of objects, absorbing them into your body, or change the area around you. So it's basically like alchemy from that certain anime. Take a guess which anime. As he says this. And I'm guessing your quirk is a permeation quirk, right? As Izuku just says this. Yes, but actually no. As Izuku calls upon his axe, as his axe starts flying towards him, as Overhaul gets sliced in the arm a little bit, causing his stone-like arm to disappear. As Izuku grabs his axe and says this. My quirk is just called Ghost. As he says this. Why, you little rat? As Izuku starts seeing his body starts changing. A four-armed monster. As Izuku grabs Eri and puts her down. As Izuku just says this. Wait, Eri, just let me do something, right? That's your name? Eri? As she says this. As Izuku just says this. Go to this address immediately. Then the heroes will save you. As she says this. Sure. As she starts leaving. As Overhaul says this. Die! As he starts creating a big ball of fire. I meant fire, not flyer. He starts creating a ball of fire and starts throwing at Izuku. So, Izuku just dodges the attack. But Izuku gets a bit on him, but it doesn't kill him, because it's not reaching to his actual real body, being the animatronic body. Wait for a second. So, Izuku starts bringing out his axe, and starts chomping through Overhaul's body, as Izuku decides to do this. Wait a minute. I have animation type ability. If I just do this, then... As Izuku just permeates through the muscle-bound creature that Overhaul's inside of. as Izuku goes inside of Overhaul and sees Overhaul controlling it like a gigantic mecha. As he says this, "What the? How the hell did you came here?" As Izuku just says this, "Huh, that was easy." As Izuku just chops off his arms and legs, causing him to lose control of the creature that he rides on. And Izuku wins the battle. And so, the heroes arrived with the help of Eri, telling the police about this. And so, Overhaul was captured by the heroes, but Izuku doesn't get the credit because he didn't ask for Fang's permission. And besides, they don't think that Fang is actually a hero anymore. So, after that little incident, Izuku, well, gained a little bit of fame. And even some people, kind of like outraged. Like, they're kind of outraged that Izuku doesn't get the credit because they saved, a little girl from the most notorious Yakuza member ever. But Izuku just ignored that part. So, the next day comes being the final day of their, wait for a second, internship, where they're gonna be doing one more last, little, thing, being the, patrolling. As Izuku tells Eri to stay over there, as she says this, "Okay, Izuku," as Izuku leaves, with, Fang. As Fang starts moving around, as Fang says this, "Hey Izuku, did you find anything?" As Izuku just says this, "Sorry Yuji, I don't see anything suspicious." As Izuku hears a large explosion, including, Fang himself. He hears the explosion. As Fang looks over and sees the news from a local coffee shop TV. Apparently, a villain has arrived, being the villains that are aligned, or at least joined, the Springtrap cult. As the villain in question was a gigantification villain with a gigantification quirk. As Vanny was riding over his shoulder, as tons and tons of these machinery started being brought to a little area. As for some other villains following them, these villains were wielding guns. These guns are also like bayonets. They basically have bayonets as well. And so they started leaving, as many of the heroes arrived to try and take him down, but they were taken down by these brand new animatronics, which they were called the service bots, or at least used to be service bots. Apparently, the Fazbear Entertainment Coalition, or at least the Japanese branch, created these bots in a ton of events so they can make a bit of money. But unfortunately, the Springtrap cult made it and also stole the blueprints and also turned them into their own twisted, monstrous robots. And so many of the heroes were defeated as Izuku just looked on in horror. But Izuku can't, just stay there and, start just looking and seeing the world burn. But Izuku decides to take action and starts going to that area. As Izuku sees Vanny and the rest of the Springtrap cult. Apparently, they're now in a little area, not in the neighborhood where Springtrap, or at least like William Afton used to kill, but instead the neighborhood right beside it. Apparently, he, or should I say she, was taking care of these animatronic bits, or at least these animatronic scraps to create something, but Izuku doesn't know. So, Izuku starts going towards that place, but Izuku turns himself invisible. That's one of his abilities, by the way. Wait for a second. Sorry about that, I kind of sneezed. So, While Ezekiel was turned invisible, Ezekiel started looking around, seeing most of the areas were covered in iconography of the past killings or murders of William Afton, including FNAF 2, which is technically the first instance of William Afton, but I think it's more like the I don't know. Well, just look at MatPat's timeline of the games because I kind of forgot some of them. I mean, it's been a long time since I watched a theory about FNAF for in a while, so just look at his timeline and just imagine it like that. So, after a while of walking through mementos of William Afton and his last killing being his end where he was turned into Springtrap. And Izuku goes through a double door to be precise, and sees something terrifying. But unfortunately, this will be the end of the episode. Anyway, I'm really sorry that I had to end this video short, but sorry not sorry. Anyway, this will be the end of this episode, and so I hope you liked the video. Comment and subscribe, and also like on the video so you can support me. And I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.